Welcome to Building Better Relationships with Chuck and Barb Lewis, equipping listeners and viewers with the biblical tools to conquer the difficulties faced in this life. Chuck has practiced crisis intervention since the 1980s and has been in ministry together with his wife Barb for over 20 years. They've taken the countless lessons and the knowledge they've acquired and have put them into this life skills class to share with you. We hope this blesses you.
Well, good morning. I'm Pastor Chuck, and this is my wife.
I'm Barbara.
And we're excited to be with you again on another program of building better relationships. And you know, when I think about building, I think about it taking a process. And
Good.
you don't learn one skill and then you got it.
Yeah.
These tools and skills that we teach you are ongoing, and we have to practice them as well as we teach them to you.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to teach the tools and skills than to actually do them. But as we practice,
As we have learned.
we get better. See, practice doesn't make you perfect; it makes you better.
That's right.
So what's our topic today?
Today we're going to talk about helping versus enabling. What's the difference? How to know?
Yes.
And you know, that line can be a blurry line. If we see someone struggling and we love them, and especially if you're an empathetic or a compassionate person, I think our natural tendency is to want to help. And, especially if you're somebody that has kind of a natural instinct to fix and rescue. So I think that we need to look at whether our helping is empowering someone to get better
Right.
and grow as a person,
Right.
or if our helping is keeping them from growing.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and you know, there's a hard defining line between the two. It's like, well, okay, I've been taught all my Christian life about giving, and God's wanting me to give till it hurts, type thing. And
Yeah.
if it's not a sacrificial giving, it's not giving at all, and all these kind of things. But God is a practical God, and He wants us to have boundaries along with our giving. And He said that He loves a cheerful giver.
Mhm.
Well, we can give cheerfully if we have boundaries around our giving. But if we feel obligated, he even said, don't give out of obligation or necessity,
Yeah.
because that's putting us into a place of law, and God is not wanting us to do it in a legalistic way.
Right, and that is 2 Corinthians 9, verse 7, and it says, "Let each one give as he has determined in his own heart, not grudgingly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver."
Right.
And I think that's a good indication when we're enabling and not helping, because if we're feeling resentful about our giving,
Yeah.
we're probably over giving or giving more than we really want to.
Right. Absolutely. And I worked with a lady one time that had a real desire for reaching homeless people.
Yeah.
And she really cared about them, and God gave her that compassion. I believe that. But what happened is she lived in a one-bedroom apartment, and she started inviting these homeless people to her apartment, and started out pretty harmless, to where they would sleep on her couch and she'd sleep in her bedroom. Well, pretty soon it got so out of hand. She came home one time, and her entire apartment was full of homeless people, and they were all over her bed, all over her bedroom, on the floor, and in the living room. She had nowhere to go. And she
Yeah.
called me up crying. She said, "Oh my God, they've taken over my apartment. Where am I going to stay now?" So, it can really get out of hand. So what we did was we got that straightened out, to where I won't go into all the details because it'd take too long, but she began to learn that she could join up with an organization that really reached out to the homeless people. And she had different things that she could do to assist
Yeah.
that organization without trying to become the organization.
Mm.
See, she thought if she helped, she had to become all the organizations that were reaching
Yes.
the homeless.
Providing everything.
Everything. That
Instead
meant
of thinking about what her part would be.
right, losing herself
Mhm.
to reach out. So that's why we're talking about this topic today, because there's a difference between helping and enabling. And she started enabling them to create her own apartment, but that was not providing what she needed. So you can't lose yourself to provide, help to someone else.
Right. So it's and I think it would be dangerous to invite strangers into your home too,
Very dangerous.
not knowing if somebody's on drugs or what their
Or
background is.
mentally ill or
So
whatever.
that could have been a very dangerous
Oh
situation
yes,
for her.
absolutely.
But what you're talking about too is not knowing where you end and somebody else begins.
Right.
There's some really interesting verses in the Bible. One of them, and it's about how much we're supposed to take responsibility for each other.
Right.
One of them is Galatians 6, verse 2, and it says, "Bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ." Well, the Greek term for bear applies to something that is excessive or extreme in its weight, too much for one person to carry. So we need to help bear each other's burdens when it's excessive like that. Galatians 6, verse 5 said each one should carry their own load. Well, doesn't it sound like that's contradicting? But the Greek word for load there was the size of a backpack. So it's a reasonable, manageable burden. In other words, we need to carry our own obligations and responsibilities, an amount that's not commonly needed to be shared with others, and shouldering those our own personal backpack God helps us with. But when we have a burden that's too big for us to bear, that's when we're supposed to help bear one another's burdens. So we do all have a responsibility for our own, to take care of our own responsibilities.
Right.
And the ability to do that. And I think that that's a trait that I see often in people that are enabling is they feel over responsible.
Yes.
And so when they see someone that's not taking responsibility and struggling because of it, they want to jump in and help them. And I think we should talk about some common examples of that. Like you just gave the one about the person that was helping the homeless. One that I saw, I had a friend years ago that had bipolar. So she really struggled a lot with depression. And I remember feeling very overwhelmed with her problems and talking to someone about it. And they told me, they said, "Barbara, you are part of the team. This person needs a whole team, but you're not the whole team."
Right.
And that I was supposed to just figure out what my part was, what I could do to help, and what I felt that I could do to help. And what I remember the Lord telling me one day to go over and help her clean her house. And I was working full time then, and it was Saturday, and I thought, okay, Lord, I'll go as soon as I get my housework done. And he said, "No, go now."
Yeah.
So one of my parts was to help her with housework. Another thing that I could do is take care of her daughter, who was the same age as my youngest daughter, and so they would play together. But that was something I could do. I could do childcare, and I could help her clean house, but I couldn't take care of everything for her.
Right. Yeah, taking a meal to somebody or helping clean their house is not enabling. Enabling would be to clean their house from now on
Yeah,
and neglect your own house.
right.
See, that would be enabling them.
Yes.
Everything has to be balanced. And, there could be people listening right now that you're out of balance. you feel like you're obeying the Lord by giving everything that you have and always being there for other people, which is great, to care for other people and do things for other people. But if you're neglecting your own family and you're neglecting your own life and your own time to do that, then it leads to burnout. And God doesn't want us to burn out. He wants us to enjoy the things that He's wanting us to do, the calling that He puts upon our hearts. Some people have a gift of helps.
That's true.
So they want to help in every way they can, which is great. Helping people move, helping people with a project, things like that. Nothing wrong with that, as long as you have boundaries around that, and you're not always gone from your own family to accommodate somebody else's project.
So doing self-care is important. I want to give you a definition of helping and the definition of enabling. So helping is to give someone assistance or support to do something that will make their situation better. And you've helped if you've assisted someone in achieving something positive that they were unable to do by themselves. So helping is an act of kindness. Enabling is continuously doing things for someone that they have the ability to do for themselves. Often going out of your way or neglecting your own needs to help someone else. And it could be supporting problematic behavior or addiction, where the person is receiving help instead of being held accountable for facing the consequences of their action. This is a very common thing in someone that has a relationship with an addicted person, like a parent, a child, a spouse, or whatever. And so it's, and I think that we gradually probably develop those dysfunctional skills of overhelping, not really knowing where we've helped. And so what we want to help you recognize is when you're helping is actually enabling the person to continue in their dysfunctional behavior or their addiction or whatever it is they're doing, instead of growing and getting better. And I think, like parents, maybe calling in, say the child sleeps in and doesn't get ready for school, to call the school and excuse them. I don't think you should do that.
No.
I think you should let them suffer the consequences of having an unexcused absence.
Well, and boy, some people would say, well, that's just being an unfair parent, but it's not. It's letting that child experience their own consequence. If they don't, they'll keep repeating it. So you're enabling them to set yourself up to always rescue them and always call the party that they need to call. And we kind of paint ourselves into a corner.
Right.
Yeah.
We can create the monster. I think the more we are responsible for someone else's backpack,
Yes.
that load of responsibilities that is as small as a backpack, the more you take responsibility for someone else, it just enables them not to be responsible. This is a really simple thing that I noticed about Chuck and I. He's my husband. He fills the gas tank for me. And he loves to do that for me, and I have not filled the gas tank for years. But what I noticed that happened is that I quit looking to see if the gas tank even had gas in it. So I thought, well, that's not good. I wouldn't even know if I was ready to run out of gas.
Right, yeah.
And it's because you've taken responsibility for that for me.
Yes.
Which is a blessing. But
and
I mean,
a joy for me.
But that's a simple thing of how you taking responsibility of that for me. And not that you were enabling, you were being kind and because you love to do things for me, but I quit taking responsibility for that. And I think that we need to look at it, I'm willing to do.
Yeah, so setting limits is something that we do, and you're not going to always get the approval of the other person.
That could have made that person mad.
Well, and sometimes it does.
Yes.
When we set a boundary, I tell you, I've talked to people about boundaries that they thought I joined a cult. They said, "Man, this sounds like a cult to me." Boundaries, you know. Well, because of the fact that it was setting limits on them, and a lot of times people don't like setting those limits.
Mhm.
But you know, it's so important. You can't just let people have free reign and do whatever they want to do, and call you up and not only ask you. Sometimes they don't even ask; they tell you, you know, I need this, I need that. You'll do this for me. You'll. It's not even a question. It's a demand, and so we lose respect when we don't set boundaries. And you know, people might not like those limits that we set on them, but they're kind of calling for them at the same time. And they're saying, please don't let me run over you. Please don't let me disrespect you. Now, they're not going to say that verbally, but I think people will respect you more and honor you more if you do set those limits, even though they're hard. I talked to a parent, a couple of parents one time, and said, I know my child smokes marijuana, and I told them that I didn't want them to smoke it outside the house. They can do it out down in the basement. I said, well, do you want them to smoke marijuana? No, I don't want them to smoke it at all. But at least I know where they are when they smoke it. Well, you know, again, it's hard to say, I don't want you to smoke it because I love you, and it will mess up your body, it will mess up your mind and your reasoning and your judgments, and I just don't want to see anything happen to you. Enabling would be, I only want you to smoke it in the basement.
So you're assisting in their addiction or dysfunctional behavior.
Right.
Well, one thing you mentioned as you were talking was a choice that you, when you're giving in a healthy way, you have a choice as to whether or not you give.
Right.
But when it's enabling, you might feel that you are obligated to give or that you have a compulsion
Mm-hmm.
to give. So
Right.
it's not having a choice, it's a compulsion or obligation.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's not what the Bible says to do.
Well, I want you to talk about something before our time is up, and it's that you and I were talking about yesterday, and that is thinking through the end result of your giving.
Yes.
And one thing you mentioned was if you feel like you should buy someone a car,
Mm-hmm.
and thinking through what the end result of that giving. I want you to talk about
Yeah,
that.
I mean, you know, somebody comes to you and says, "Man, I need a car. I don't have the money to buy one." And maybe you do. Maybe God has blessed you to where you have excess money, and so there's a thought that comes to your mind. Well, maybe I should just buy them a car. Okay, well, you need to think about all the uh, results of that. Result thinking says, okay, I could buy them a car, but can they afford to pay for insurance? Can they afford to maintain that car? Can they afford all the expenses that go along with it? So if they don't, now you bought them a car, and now they're going to ask you every time the oil needs to be changed, can you just take care of that for me?
Mhm.
Or the gas is getting low, can you fill that up for me? I mean, you know, painting yourself in a corner again, you know, says, okay, if I provide this car, then am I going to be expected to provide all the maintenance that goes with it? The insurance. Can they pay for the insurance? Am I going to have to pay for that? See, it goes on and on and on. So the way you prevent that is to just not go there at all. Now you can help them by letting them know where they can go for financial counseling, to look at their finances, how to save money, to reach their goals. Financial advisors are all over the world they can talk to, and somebody that can practically, and you've done that for people, help them set up budgets and things like that. That's one thing you can do with that, enabling them. I know a couple that their their son had a brand new car, and he got driving too fast, and he rolled the car. I put it against a telephone pole, and it was a Firebird. I loved that car. That was an awesome looking car. I was trying not to covet that car, right? And so one time he got in that wreck and didn't hurt him. Thank God. I mean, the Lord spared him from getting hurt, but the parents just he was not upset about it at all. And I said, "Why aren't you upset?" And he says, "Well, my parents will just buy me another one." There was no remorse at all about what he did because there's no consequence for him.
Mhm.
See, and that's our whole point today, is you've got to look at the whole thing all the way through. And what's the consequence going to be, if there is any, if you enable this person?
Right. Basically, you are the one that's suffering their consequences.
You're going to suffer for it. So
instead of them.
give if God tells you to give without strings attached. Let it be a thing that you're obedient to the Lord, but do not enable. Our time is gone. We've ran over today, but we're going to continue this next time and get into some things that we didn't get into this time.
Right.
God bless you. It's good to be back with you. We'll see you again next time.
If you are blessed by this ministry, please subscribe, like, and share. You can also make donations at chucklewisministries.com. Join us to keep uncovering the tools to build better relationships together. Let's do this again next week.